Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Janneke, and today I'm here with two wonderful teachers and authors and pioneers within the metaphysical field, Teal Swan and Evette Rose. Now, Evette Rose, she is the author of this amazing book, A Metaphysical Anatomy, Your Body's Talking to You, Are You Listening? And she's also the founder of MAP Metaphysical Anatomy Process, and she has been traveling all around the world helping thousands of people as a life coach and as a personal development teacher. And Teal Swan is a YouTube phenomenon. Like thousands of people all around the world is watching her videos every week. She's doing synchronization workshops all over the world. And she's the author of 3 books. And the most recent one is The Completion Process, the practice of putting yourself back together again. And today we will be speaking about physical health, the root causes of illnesses and ailments, and how we can heal. Hello, ladies. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
Doing awesome.
Wonderful. I'm so excited and thrilled to be having both of you who have so much experience on this and have written each a book about this. And I think it's going to be an interesting and fascinating conversation. And I'm thinking that I can start with you, Evette, to hear a little bit about this amazing book that is kind of formed as a encyclopedia
Right.
where you can find root causes or tendencies to different ailments and pains and diseases. And I'm also curious how you found out this information. Where did it come from? Did you download it, or is it through research?
Oh my God, how much time do you have? Okay, so I'll compress it. So what happened was I started teaching seminars internationally, and I always just had people, people have their emotional blocks, and people come to you with physical issues as well. And so with the high volumes of seminars that was happening and the amount of people constantly asking me, Vet, what is this if I have this? What does this mean? What does that mean? And I just decided to write a book because I had such a deep urge to just answer everyone and just wanting to help and just loving seeing people getting results that I actually ended up writing the book so that I can just go, here's a book, here's a book, here's a book. But like to get the answers there and then we can have a conversation afterward. It was driving me bananas. Like I just couldn't answer everyone and I felt so conflicted because I wanted to answer them. So that's the reason why I started to write the book. And when I looked at writing the book, I was sitting down and I was thinking, how can I write the book without having to reinvent the wheel? Because no one wants to really do that. You really want to share something new. So I was looking at what's missing in all these other books where people did write about the medical conditions. And I realized that, and also in my work, I realized that things go so much deeper because you are an expression of your ancestry. The only reason why you can feel sadness is because there's a predisposition for that. The only reason why, for example, like a child, the only reason why they can feel a feeling of sadness, which they've never been introduced before, is because there's a predisposition for that reaction, given the circumstances that would create the environment that would make you feel that. And so I realized that, there's not a lot written about genetic predispositions. There's not a lot of information out there about what this ancestor went through. No one really realizes that medical conditions and emotional patterns has a very big tendency of repeating itself every 3rd generation from the mother's side. So if you want to look at what's happening in your life and you can't see, why am I feeling this feeling, but nothing really happened to me that would justify that? Yes, there's predispositions, but also the question would be is what happened to grandma? Because you already existed in your mother while your mother was in the womb in your grandmother. So the stress that she was experiencing was already being programmed. Like it's all this juicy information was already being captured and just be plugged in together. And then mom goes through her stress and then you go through your stress and you have this big mess of like, okay, so here am I having my experience, but where do I stop and start? Where does my mom stop and start? Like you're just having this collective experience and you accept your feelings as yours because you're feeling it. So you're thinking it has to be mine, but it's not.
But
and that's when I started writing a book about that because no one covered this.
But to be the devil's advocate here a little bit,
yes.
like so, isn't that just genes? Like genes from the ancestors or from my mother?
Yeah.
And
correct.
so
That's absolutely correct.
what's
What we
the
have to get is that
metaphysical?
genes are encoded. Like that's what we don't get. Like scientists basically look at a gene and they say it like they're very physical about it. They don't understand that genes themselves are multidimensional. So they are
Yes.
encoded with emotional information. They're encoded with information that the ancestors have passed down. Knowledge, all of that is encoded in genetic, in what we are looking at on a very physical level and saying this is DNA. So it's the fact that, what she has discovered is what eventually science is going to discover, which is that all of these things are contained within the genetic code, and it's kind of our way of programming ourselves into, um, let's say, a blueprint from which we then expand over the course of our lifetime.
Is that what epigenetics is?
I would say yes and no. It's borderline. It's almost like it covers it to a certain extent. Like, for example, where I find with the work that I've done is when you look at the nuclear cell, like it's not just one cell, there's like billions of them, but whatever changes in that cell will change everywhere. Now you have the ribsome, which is around the nucleus in the middle, which where the trauma from the DNA and everything that's stored there gets expressed to that ribsome, and that actually decides how this is going to manifest and how you're going to show up emotionally and the predispositions that you're going to have. But then life happens, okay? So you have certain things that it just happens. You
Does
have to
it?
deal with it. Yeah. And then it switches these trauma points on and off depending on the environment. So I just it's a tough question. It's a tough question, but yeah, look, I would say epigenetics, I believe in it 100%. I mean, hence metaphysical anatomy. That you can't pretend that it doesn't exist. So, yeah.
So, Teal, I'm curious about how you see this because you're a medical intuitive. And you did an interview about root causes for ailments as well. So you spoke about the same thing as Evette is doing. That's why this is so interesting. And there you said that you stated that the root cause is an emotion or a mental or a thought system or something mentally, that it's not just the physical. Do you actually see this when you work with clients? And can you explain how you see it?
Yeah, it's kind of, what I do helps people, but it's part of why I feel a little bit guilty. It's like people are paying me to basically tell them that purple is purple. When you're extrasensory, you can actually watch in that auric field how thought patterns actually feed directly into certain areas of the body. For example, if you have somebody who's thinking thoughts along the lines of low self-esteem, you'll start to see that as a pattern in the auric field that then filters straight through the solar plexus, and you tend to see that manifest as things like ulcers and stomach ailments, for example. So yeah, the answer is yes. You can actually visually see it go from thought to emotion to the body. But everybody wants to simplify the way that the mind and the emotions and the physical body work. But the problem is it's a composite. And so they're all mirrors of each other. And so it's like the physical affects the mental, affects the emotional affects the mental, affects the physical. You can't separate them from each other. So you're watching this reflection process through all the layers of a human being. And of course, the energy that is beyond that, what we would call the astral body or whatever you want, is essentially filtering into those expressions that we call a physical human, which is a composite of emotion, mind, and physical.
So, Yvette, do you see things like that too, or do you have another approach?
No, I agree with Teal. That's pretty much in a nutshell. Yeah.
And are you psychic too? Are you able to see your clients?
There's a difference between being intuitive and being psychic. Like a psychic will tell you the future, which I kind of like people to predict for themselves. And being intuitive is kind of like being more someone that can feel, sense what's happening with the other person. So yes, I do. I do like to kind of view people. Like I would see energy flowing. What I like to do is, and this is specifically what I like to play with in my techniques. And I think Teal would probably understand completely what I'm saying here. Like when you play with the computation neurons and you look at the messages as being sent back and forth, you can tell exactly what's happening in that person's life. What are they thinking? Even if they might sit there and you're asking them, so how did that make you feel? And they're like, they can't answer you because of either disassociation or they're too scared. And then as a practitioner, you can just quickly go in and view those little neurons and see where in the body the stress builds up, like where does it light up? And then based upon metaphysical anatomy as well, then seeing where in the body the physical problem is, and then you can tell based on where you can feel the emotion or whatever it is that's happening, and then you can say, okay, so it's something to do with dad. So tell me a little bit more about your relationship with dad. And then go like, oh my God, and then the tears, and then everything happens.
So
yes.
You speak a lot about the trauma in this book. And what is a trauma, actually, in your perspective?
Trauma, to me, that's a really good question. Trauma is something that we each experience individually. Like, for example, what could be traumatic to me, it could be something that you wouldn't even blink. It would mean nothing to you, because it depends on your biological makeup, how you respond to your environment. So that's kind of what decides what's your threshold, where's your limit, what is going to be stressful to you, what is not going to be stressful to you. So trauma in itself means something that was extremely distressing to you, where you felt you lost control. And it's something that stayed with you. The memory stayed with you. The feeling stayed with you. The body's trauma cycles didn't complete itself to process the feeling and the distress that it caused. So anything that stays, that can either be, in your language, it could be traumatic for you, or it can be stressful. But either way, something that caused you so much distress that you can't let go of it, or you have not let go of it.
And it's so interesting, because you describe in the book that animals, like an antelope, are like shaking it off, but we're not. Like, humans are holding on to it.
So crying is a very good example of a trauma cycle wanting to complete itself. Crying is actually a wonderful process, but look at what happens sometimes when you did cry. People get spanked, they get hit, they get abused. So immediately the body is like, oh my God, it's not okay to respond. It's not okay to try to complete the cycle. So what you do is you suppress, you disassociate, you become, that feeling of numbness, and it starts to benefit you because it keeps you safe. So it's all these layers that ends up coming on top of this beautiful process that should actually be where a person should be allowed to complete, but we just don't. We don't complete it. And for example, hyperventilation is also a way of the body just saying, okay, I'm checking out, I've had enough. And people start hyperventilating because they just need to rid themselves of the adrenaline and the cortisol and everything that's being suppressed in the body. That's your body giving you a big screw you. I'm gonna release this now, whether you like it or not.
Seizures are the same way.
Exactly. And meltdowns, panic attacks, that's the body giving you a big, well, screw you, I'm going to deal with this right now because you're not listening to me. So I'm going to force you to take time out. You will deal with this public or wherever you are. It's happening now.
So where does the time element come in? Because I can imagine that we suppress so much then because we're not shaking it off and we're not crying it out. So I can imagine that we're storing so many traumas. And what makes it all of a sudden just come out? Like, Teal, if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I would like to hear both of our thoughts on that. What I've noticed is that healing happens cyclically. We like to think linearly because that's how we are in our physical time-space reality, but the way that the whole universe moves is in cycles. It moves like a spiral. And so what I notice is that people will encounter a trauma, and they cannot find resolution with that trauma, which is what she was describing earlier. If I can't find resolution, it means that I can't make what I just experienced fit in with me becoming better or more or expanding. And because I can't make that fit in, it's basically going to stay stuck. I didn't move into a space of integration with that experience. And so we end up suppressing, we end up not moving through the experience. And then what will happen is that because it's stored in us, it is still a point of attraction within us. So we live in a law of attraction-based universe, right? So what happens is the universe, no matter how much we're positively focusing or fill in the blank, is going to be a match to that point of attraction within us. So suddenly you're walking down the road and you re-experience a trauma. So I would call this a trigger. It's basically something that mirrors that previous trauma to us. So, I mean, you could get really complicated. You can even involve the genetic ancestry. So let's say your grandmother went through an abandonment trauma and that's part of your genetic predisposition. Let's say that you break up with a boyfriend. If that activates that unresolved trauma, now suddenly often you have a symptom release where basically you start to see the manifestation of that illness in the physical level.
Okay. What do you think about that, Evette?
I totally agree with what she said. It's for example, and the cool thing about that as well, or not so cool for the person experiencing it, but what I noticed is that it's like For example, I had so many examples where someone would come to me, they will tell me, Yvette, I feel like I've been raped, but I don't ever remember this happening. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so let's explore. So I'm getting excited. Like getting my Sherlock Holmes glasses out, and I'm like, want to start doing, the exploration. And what I noticed with that, for example, is because the predisposition for violation is so strong in this person, even though she wasn't actually raped, but her mom was. The mere fact that a man touched her in a way that she didn't expect, and she felt invaded, and boom, the rape trauma came up, and it's like all these memories, and I'm like, okay, well, let's deal with this. So it depends also, every person has a threshold as well.
Yeah.
We all have a threshold for how much we can take and when is that switch going to flick. And that's why I said what could be really distressing to you could be nothing for me. Something that can trigger cancer in you will do nothing to me, for example, because we have different the way that the trauma is stored is just so different and with different intensities. Because even though the environment for that lady that I just used as an example was different, it still created the feeling of violation, but she wasn't raped. So it doesn't mean your environment doesn't have to be the same as a predisposition in order for something to be triggered. It's merely how you respond to that and how high your threshold is for what you can handle and deal with. Also depending on the amount of stress that you're feeling at the time when that happened. Because normally the more stressed you are, the more exhausted you are, the weaker your boundaries are, the more your guard is completely down. So you are so much more sensitive to something being triggered. So that's always when you look at someone when something happened, like when there's an emotional response, you'll see that it happened during a time where they either felt at their lowest or they were just completely exhausted or they've just hit their limit in one way or another, but they might not even be consciously aware of it because they are so dissociated.
So, it's actually frightening. The degree to which people are dissociated from their mind, emotions, and body is absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can't just answer what food works with your body. That's actually, to me, as an intuitive in general, and knowing the way that, let's say, bodies, if in their optimum state of health, the way that people should be able to live life, you should be able to tell when you put food in your mouth how your body reacts to that. But how many people do you know that could answer that question? How does your body feel about bread? That's frightening. That means we are that disconnected from our body.
I haven't thought about that. Evette, just back to the trauma, because you said that when the mind is saying no and the heart says yes, that's a trauma. And I thought that was a very good example because that happens a lot. I feel with me at least.
Absolutely. It's like when I was at school once and I had this hot dog and the girlfriend is like, "Can I have a bite of that?" I'm like, I think my head said yes, but my heart says no. So it was like that conflict, and that's kind of at that point where I started realizing, oh, that's interesting. And I realized, like, why was there different answers coming from different parts of my body? So here it gets really interesting because now there's a part of you that says, yes, I want this. And then there could be a part of you that says, no, I don't want this. But that part of you that might feel resistant or that there might be like a feeling of that warning feeling, like that gut feeling something's off. The biggest question and where people make the biggest mistake is that people don't understand the difference between an old memory that's activated and their intuition.
Okay.
Very, very big difference. So a lot of people make bad decisions based on old traumas that are activated, but they don't realize that. They just know, something doesn't feel good. Oh my God, okay, I'm not going to do this. But it's actually because it triggered something and they're so oblivious to what's happening because they're so disassociated from their body in the first place, forget about the past, from their body as well, that they end up making just bad decisions.
Can you give an example of that?
For example, let me see quickly here. I would, for example, I would actually use myself as an example. Let's say I had a lot of issues with not being able to trust people. That was huge for me because my dad constantly lied to me. We had a really turbulent relationship and he would constantly lie to me and always be lying to my mom. So to me, everyone was lying. As a child, I really questioned what people were saying to me. And then as I matured, when people would talk to me, I would always take it with a pinch of salt. But then I started to learn that you have to start trusting people. You can't, keep living this life that you don't even have anymore because the past in the past, it's not real, but you feel it, so it feels like it's still real. And I realized that sometimes someone would say something to me and I'm like, can I trust this person or can I not? And I instinctively would just go, I'm not going to trust this person. So I'm just going to keep, I'm just going to go walk on with my little day and I'm just going to go on. But then I had to start to learn to trust. So that's a really good example of learning to understand, is this an old fear coming up? Or is there really genuinely something off with the situation? Is this person lying to me? Can I really trust their intentions? And that's also where I became really good at watching people's patterns, watching their body language, because that everything, just the way when someone walks into a room, I can tell you everything about that person just based on how they walk and body language, because I had to, and I know Teal can really relate to this here, because there was some physical abuse as well. So and the emotional abuse and not knowing when everything's going to come and what, you're always aware, you're hyper alert constantly. Like you can almost, and it's like if the door slams, it's like, okay, out. I'm going to go play now because I'm going to just avoid anything that was going to happen. I'm gone. So here I had to really learn. I really had to learn to understand, when is it a fight or flight situation, or when can I just relax? When is something from the past being triggered, or when is there generally something that I need to be aware of or watch out for? And that's been quite a journey for me, learning that, like really learning to listen to my body. And I've started noticing patterns now that when I have a certain squeeze feeling, I know, okay, this is something, this is the real deal. I need to watch because something is happening that's not for my highest and best. And then I know, okay, here's a gut feeling of, okay, something is really off, but I'm like, okay, I can actually see where this is coming from. This is an old memory from the past. And just something really fun for people who's listening, what I like to do is, like, when you listen to that, when you get that feeling of not knowing when to trust, what I like to do is to just give it a voice and say, you know what, just shout out, what is it? And listen to the voice. Is it a child? Is it your dad? Is it your mom? Is it a genuine concern? Is it your intuition? That will already give you an indication. Are you responding based on an old trauma or fear or genetic predisposition even? I mean, it doesn't even have to be something that happened in your life. Or is this something really genuinely serious here that you need to look at? So it's a phenomenal... I mean, can you imagine world peace if we can just listen to our bodies and we all just have the same value, should have instant peace? Like, that would be awesome, right?
Yeah, I just feel like it's a long way there. Like, I feel a bit overwhelmed of all the traumas I need to work with, you know?
Just look at the prime ministers. Everyone is having their freaking toys out and they're like, well, my kung fu is better than your kung fu because I'm taking out all my daddy issues out on America now because I couldn't speak up to my dad. So now I'm going to give everyone a fuck you because I couldn't speak up, and now I'm going to speak up because now I'm in power position, and they abuse that power because they overcompensate. So here you have leaders who it's true. Here you have leaders who's acting out all their mommy and daddy issues, and they're taking it out on the freaking world. You know, I get really uptight when I talk about that because it's true. You can see it when they stand and they point a little finger there, and you're like, if you only knew. What you're really responding to. If you only knew the stuff that you need to deal with so that you can be a better president. Like, so yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Any comments, Teal?
No, I just love that. That was like the most beautiful rant I think I've seen in a long time. I love that. No, I feel the same way when I watch The State of the World. One thing I do when I add those, it can get really super overwhelming when people, are not tuned into their body enough to know whether something's coming from the intuition or whether something's coming from a past trauma. One way to make yourself feel a little bit better about that is if you approach these triggers, let's say, or these emotional reactions as if they might be just a reflection of trauma, genuine intuition will always be there on the other side of it anyway. So, like, there have been several times where I've been working with people who, like you said, they don't trust a person, so we go into it as if, let's just pretend that this is a mirror of the trust issues. And if it's really a trauma, they come out of it and say, oh yeah, that's just me. But if it's not, they come out of it and they're like, I still have a feeling that's not good. And that's your answer. So it's not like by going through that process, you're going to, potentially by going through the process of, let's consider maybe potentially that this is a past trauma, you'll go through it and then that will whitewash over some sort of intuition. It will not. Intuition is absolutely... like not degradable. It's the kind of thing where it will continue to be how it is, It's just not, I mean, intuition's not going to compete with the ego, is the reality. The ego tends to be louder, tends to scream, and whereas the intuition is just like, I'm offering you information. I'm just going to continue to offer you information. So if you get rid of that voice, I don't want to say get rid of because that's sort of pushing against, but if you remove the layer of the voice of the ego underneath that, the intuition is going to continue talking. So
really want to speak about the healing part as well, but I still have a few more questions. Sure. For instance, okay, let's see that I have a tennis arm or something personal, that I lost my voice because I'm a singer. Could it just be a physical cause that I actually just lost my voice?
No.
Well, because I strained it and overused it.
Well, why did you strain it? There's a reason for that. Why did you push yourself so hard? What were you, who were you trying to prove right? Who were you trying to prove wrong? Why would you be so hard on yourself? Who was hard on you as a child? Why are you still doing that? Where's your limits and boundaries? You're not listening or respecting your boundaries.
But I was in a musical, so I had to sing every night, and my voice had, dealt with that before, and all of a sudden it couldn't, work anymore.
Well, that's okay. So what was the stress during that time in your life as well? Because there's a combination that was happening.
You're asking
the voice was just, you wanted to use yourself as an example. I'm just joking. That's okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Well,
that's okay. I'm not on the spot. We're going to throw a hypothetical in here. I'm not going to put you on the spot. So let's, for example, just say that you just felt really, really stressed and something could have happened in the environment that triggered maybe an argument that you had with mom, and you really just wanted to scream and you shout at her, but you couldn't, and you just felt so stressed, you felt pressured, you were tired, and your body was just having had enough. And then often what can happen is that it can, because you're using the voice the most at that time, it's something that also has its limit. And it can also just be the body saying, you know what, with everything that's happening in your life right now and the way that you're pushing me, I've had enough. And your body does rebel. Your body actually is almost like the reptilian brain has the mentality of a 13-year-old child. So when your instinctive response is like, okay, I have had enough, it can rebel pretty nasty. Like it's like a kid that can be like throw his toys out of the cart and it's like, okay, this is what you want to do, so I'm going to play tit for tat now. The body does that. It really does.
Yeah, because I've noticed that, dancers hurt their leg and it hits you where you're most vulnerable. Like I needed my voice and then...
Okay, so so a lot of people who don't like the idea of metaphysical predisposition, let's say, towards illness, what they don't like is the idea that accidents can't possibly have anything to do with, what's behind that. Because obviously it's just physics. If you put a body in a car and you hit a body a certain way, this is going to happen. It's like ABC. But what we're not getting is if I took two bodies, and I got them in the exact same crash, we're applying the same physical laws to this person. Where the body breaks is basically going to be different based on the weakness that is already inherent within that person. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and even lining up with an accident, often that's vibrations of self-punishment, for example, just to be very short with you, that even predisposes you to getting into that physical condition. Mm-hmm. So there's always a predisposition, mentally and emotionally, for a physical ailment. Always, always, always.
Always, always, always. Okay. So, let's speak a little bit about the past lives and parallel lives, because you speak about that too, Evette, that can be a root cause too, which can be very complicated to figure out, Yeah.
Yes. When I have a client and they come to me and they say, this happened in my past life, oh my God, and I've been to 10, 20 practitioners and it's not shifting, and I'm like, I don't entertain past lives. I believe in it. I do not entertain it. I will immediately ask. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just
had literally a lump in my throat. I got scared when you asked her that question. I'm like, please don't tell me we're going to disagree on this one. Okay.
No, I don't entertain that, because I will ask the person immediately if what happened in your past life, you have 1 minute to answer me. Because people can go on and on and on because they try to disassociate from the feelings and blah, 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 using all these excuses. And I'm like, okay, so let's see, how did that past life, how did the feelings from that past life come back into this life. And then the person starts talking, I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting. Well, don't you think the fact that you felt this, I'm under attack because all these soldiers attacked me and I died. Well, don't you think the fact that your dad maybe beat at you every night would make you feel under attack? Right? So, and it's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, now we're going to deal with what actually really happened in this life that you can remember. I don't want to know hypotheticals. I care about how you feel in the here and in the now. Because the past life's in the past. That's why the word past is in it. So let's stay with now. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Oh my God! You just so much relief just now. I'm so sick of getting in this argument with people. Okay, so can I take you on a little bit of a journey back in time? Okay, so basically, what you're dealing with in this life, much more is about generational trauma than it is about past life trauma. But I'm going to explain how this works. So the entire reason to die in the first place is to wipe the slate clean. That's the reason for death. So you wipe the slate clean, and from source perspective, you choose from that perspective back into something that you think is going to assist your own expansion. The only reason you would pick a current life that relates to a past life is because through that experience, you already gained enough expansion that you're like, that's the next one I want to do. When we're talking about past life karma, this is really what it is. If I'm a butcher, obviously, if my goal, which the universe's goal is expansion, which happens through awareness, it's all about God becoming conscious of itself, I'm going to come down into the opposite side of the coin. Let's choose to be an animal that's slaughtered, for example. But when you're watching basically a cycle of trauma that you've chosen into based on the expansion that you experienced in that past life. It is not that you've drug it with you. You have not drug it with you at all. It's that based off of living through that, you have chosen into something similar or different based on the fact that that will cause your expansion. I cannot tell you how much I run into people who are like, I want to maintain a good relationship with mom and dad. So I don't want to actually look at the trauma that happened there. I'm just going to blame it on the fact that I was burned as a witch in my last life and make it about that. And the universe is kind of going, what the hell? You can't even freaking remember that. Like, what is the point of that? Why are you going there? It's completely a scapegoat. Totally.
So it doesn't help us even going there at all?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. So past life regression works for some people the same way that a guided visualization does. I mean, when you close your eyes and you're taken through a guided visualization or guided meditation, that causes ease in the body and it offers some level of resolution. That's why people are genuinely finding help through those let's say, methodologies. But whether or not a past life that you're experiencing in one of those regression sessions is actually yours or not, you never even know. Most of the time it's that you are recalling a past life that is a vibrational match to where you are in the present moment. So if I'm having abandonment issues, the past life I'm going to regress to is one where I lost my, loving partner at war or something like that. So you don't even know whether it's yours, but you're still engaging with the visualization to improve the vibration. However, I feel like it is 10 times more powerful to work on actualities that you are dealing with in this life. I mean, it doesn't even compare. When you do past life regressions with somebody versus when you work with somebody in terms of the actual trauma they've suffered in this current life, not even on the same playing field.
Yeah, because it kind of becomes an excuse in a way, and then we go into victimhood. And
it's an excuse for you to keep the pattern, because basically most of it is an avoidance to dealing with the relationships we have in the current moment. So basically it's, I don't want to face the fact that my husband's abusive. It was that I was abused in my past life by my husband. No, hell no. So if you're willing to be honest enough to focus on what is actually causing my ailment here, am I going to be damn honest with myself? Obviously, you're going to make different life choices, and your body's going to respond differently. So, so women who are in abusive relationships tend to feel tons and tons of shame. That manifests as intense skin conditions. So if I'm going to blame it on a past life, I may not leave my husband. But if I leave my abusive husband, the shame starts going away, the condition clears up. See?
Yes. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Look, past lives definitely have their place, but I would only use it as a reference point. I do respect the fact that people can see it, and yes, there's a lot of power within that, but you have to bring it to the present. Right. You have to bring it to the life here, because there's something that needs to be completed, but it's remanifesting in this life, and you need to complete it. So otherwise, it'll just keep coming back in different ways.
Let's take some examples, because that can be interesting for people to hear. For instance, like headache, a lot of people have migraines. headache. Is there a tendency there, a root cause for that, for instance?
Take it away.
Take it away, Evette.
Migraines I find really interesting. There's actually two examples, really, really cool stuff. One, for example, is like feeling extremely angry and conflicted with circumstances that you're in that you don't want to be a part of. But you feel like you have to be because you're not listening to your own boundaries. And people are overstepping your boundaries. And that's as a result of you not knowing where your limits are. Because remember, when you are in a situation and your boundary is being crossed and you feel resentful, your boundary was crossed a long time ago. That's like a delayed response. I mean, resentment is just going like, that's you gearing up to set your boundaries again, because people often need anger in order to set a boundary, because it's easy to tell someone to F off when you're really pissed off. Have you noticed?
Yes.
Right? But it's not that easy to set a boundary when you're in a really good place.
Yeah.
So people start associating that, but also, but coming back to the headache and the migraines, yes, that's just an absolute cross of boundaries being completely crossed, and a feeling of also I'm not allowed to say what I need to say. I'm not allowed to express my boundaries. Not getting your way.
Totally. So you ready for me to add to this? Because this is going to...
Yeah.
Ready? I hope some doctors are watching this one. Okay. So basically, migraines are really common in adolescence, for example. So a doctor would be sitting here and they would tell you it's because of the changes in the hormones that a teenager would come up suddenly with all these migraines. Now, I'm going to tell you that at teen age is one of the most critical cycles of identification. It's basically an individuation. It's when a person is basically saying, okay, who am I as my own person moving out into the world? So we're going through that cycle of reassessing our boundaries. Boundaries is nothing more than a sense of self. It's who am I versus who is my family. Now, look at the teen years for that. The teen years is all about boundaries. It's all about, you know what, I'm sick of being told what I get to wear and don't wear. I'm tired of being told when I have to be home. I have to figure out what I like versus what my parents like. Do I actually fit in here? Those kind of questions come up. And if you're in an environment that does not support those kinds of changes, an environment that wants to say, no, your boundaries get to be what my boundaries are, especially children of narcissistic adults, you will see the migraines start cropping up in association with teenage years. And what's real sad is that if you take them to a doctor, the doctor has no concept that that's what's feeding into the physical ailment. Doctor's going to put them on something like birth control pills to try to control the way that their hormones are going, and you've gone down the wrong road completely. And you can potentially throw a person into, say I see this with teens a lot, where they prematurely put them on these birth control pills to try to control the migraines, for example, and then you've got fertility issues for the remainder of that woman's life, just based off of that one mistake. So it's one of the reasons that people like us are so damn passionate about trying to get the mainstream to accept the fact that there's more to ailments than meet the eye.
But couldn't it also be that you get a headache because you're stressed, or you drank too much, or you smoked too many cigarettes, or you did something physical bad for your body? So that's
yes, but why did you do that?
I see that.
Yeah, that's why you always have to ask, when did you get the headache? What was happening in your life at the time? But so then people would ask me, for example, with cancer, it doesn't help when you ask the person what happened at the time when you found out that you had the cancer. You actually have to look at least 7 years prior to that, what was happening.
And is that because, and that maybe Teal can answer, is that because it's in the aura? Because I was wondering about that. The traumas, they must be stuck somewhere. Some say in the body, but it's in the energetic field, right?
Well, so I'm going to give you an explanation that's a lot more complicated.
Okay.
When we experience a trauma, our consciousness has the capacity to fracture. And so there are aspects of us that are actually stuck in the past. Now, I know that our minds are going to make that linear again. We're going to make the past something that happened back then, but actually the timelines are happening simultaneously. But it means that an aspect of you is stuck in the trauma, like currently. So even though our physical minds may say, oh, at 7 years old, I lost my dad, and that's the childhood grief that's leading to the cancer now, that's actually happening right now within the quantum universe. And because it's linked to you, it's a point of attraction of yours, right? But So what's happening essentially is that when I'm looking at the emotional body, right, it'll almost look like somebody has taken a cookie cutter and actually cut aspects of the auric field out. But if you follow those cutouts, it actually links back to the original trauma where a person's consciousness is still stuck. So rather than say it does affect the blueprint, you could say that you're a blueprint. Even though it affects the blueprint, what we're really watching is the fact that not all of you is actually in the present moment. Aspects of your consciousness have split off, kind of like a stream going sideways off the main current of the river. And in order to find healing and integrate, you got to bring that back around. But it means you got to go back and basically re-experience and resolve the trauma that occurred.
I agree with that. That's exactly how I see it as well. And we have pretty much the same language for it. Like that, I would, for example, would call soul fragments again. And the awesome part about what you also said about the parallel existence, what I started playing with and what I have so much fun with is that there's a part of you that, for example, say for example, in this life, in this existence right here, you have a fear of public speaking. It's like, okay, well, there's a part of you existing somewhere that doesn't have that. So go pull those resources and bring it to this lifetime. Like, I love it. It's so much fun, like, because it's part of you. It's there, and it's just waiting to be tapped into.
Right.
So what she's talking about is basically reverse
yeah.
integration. So like you can integrate the past, you can also integrate the future. And it's super freaking intense. Like when you do one of those, oh my gosh, like it's like vibrationally, you're making your body catch up that fast, you know?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Wow.
You are so resourceful, you just don't know it.
Yeah, I think I remember you did a video about that, Teal, that one part of you didn't want to be on stage and one part did want to be on stage, and then you
well, that's the opposite. I left the aspect of me that didn't want to be on stage off stage where it wanted to be.
Okay.
That was intentional non-integration is what that was.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking about something, serious, like depression, that I've also had. So I really feel for those who have depression because it's so difficult. And I spoke to a friend of mine who is still depressed, but she's on a pill. So I really want to move on a little bit to speaking about conventional medicine and school medicine, because I was saying to her, like, so why don't you try, to be off the pill for a while and see if you can work on the issue? And she was just like, no. She got really angry. Like, then I'll lose the willingness to do anything, and now I'm actually happy and I can deal with my stuff now, but I can't without that pill. So I'm very curious to hear your perspectives on this. Which
one of us do you want to have go first?
Well, who wants to go first?
Go. Yeah, you can go.
I'm going to try to hold myself back here. This is like one of my biggest triggers. So basically, I have obviously a lot of respect for the fact that the medical field knows what it knows very well. I really love the fact that we are studying the way to put body parts back together, for example. My first choice of career, aside from this, was in fact obstetric surgery. So I'm a little bit of a medical freak. However, why did I not go through medical college? Besides the fact that I knew that I'd be put in jail because I cannot adhere to the absolute BS that happens in the medical field relative to insurance companies, is the fact that they are looking at a picture of physical health that is about that big, right? So the conventional medicine, we should say, understands very well how to fix a machine. They understand how to graft skin. They understand how to put a body that has been fragmented on a highway back together again. What they fail at miserably is chronic illness. Absolutely miserably, because they do not understand that it does not matter if you put a body back together again or whatever you do to it. If the mental and emotional aspect is still present, you will manifest the exact same thing all over again. So it's like they're basically turning people down a road, the physical road, and they're saying this is what you do to heal the issue, and it will never happen. This is why cancers come back. It's why you can't heal somebody from depression. Even a psychiatrist will sit in front of you and be like, it frustrates the hell out of us. Our hands are freaking tied. we're basically in a position where when you sit down in front of me as a client, I get to basically decide from my giant plethora list of pills what I want to try you on. And we don't even know enough about the human brain to know how you're going to interact with it. And so basically we're dealing with a very archaic science. It's archaic. It is in the baby phases of understanding what creates ailments. But it does have its place. So my main argument basically is that we need to be having mainstream medicine needs to be integrative. It needs to be where you have somebody who understands the physical aspect of healing, and you need to have somebody who understands the emotional aspect of healing. You need to have somebody that understands energetics. You need to have somebody that can work with the human mind. All of these things need to be put together as a pie when you're looking at a person who's coming to you with a specific ailment. That's my rant.
So
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Teal, so would you say that this person that I refer to shouldn't take a pill, or is it a combination? Like, is it no pills, or?
I am the kind of person who does not believe in psychiatric medicines yet. I use the word yet because it is not, it's literally like bloodletting at this point. We do not understand enough about the way that the brain works to understand how it's going to interact with these chemicals. When you're working with a Prozac, for example, you've got a really big chance that you're going to make the condition worse instead of better, which is why you've got such a high rate of homicide on Prozac, such a high rate of suicide on Prozac, for example. So it's a risk that I feel like is too dangerous to take. Also, it develops a dependency, which from a standpoint of a healer, I can't be behind that. I cannot be behind the idea that it's healing for somebody to develop a dependency and not be able to ever get off of it, because if you do, you're going to shoot yourself. But but also at the same time, I also see a lot of the things that we're using to cope on a physical level as just part of the symptoms. So if I was able to work with somebody, I don't usually take people off of meds, when they're working with me. I don't tell them to go to a psychiatrist and wean off. I tell them to just table that for a minute, put it to the side, let's deal with the emotional and mental aspects that we can get to, and then eventually a person will get to a point where they want to wean off of it naturally, then they can go see the psychiatrist and ask them how to do that. But no, you did not come to this life to be dependent on a chemical to be able to be happy here. So, yeah.
I normally see it like, and I agree with your point of view, and by the way, and it's like having little training wheels on a bicycle. Right? You learn to ride your bicycle, you have these two little wheels in the back, and it kind of stops you from falling. But at some point, you have to take that off. And I see that with medication. Like, I can see that there's a place for it. Like, if someone was so traumatized, they have no concept of healing, to use something that can calm them down, help them cope with a little bit with their circumstances and to find their feet again, but to let go of it as well. Like, not hold on to those crutches, because that's what it becomes. It's a crutch. And it just feeds into your feeling, that inability of feeling like, I can't do this, I'm losing control. Like, it's almost like it validates that. And for example, and the thing also with depression is you really have to look at why it's there, because the medication obviously suppresses that. And here's the thing, what I also found in my research as well, is that some people are actually born with depression. But then you have to look at, how did the mother feel when she was depressed? Because, and Till, you'll love this, I actually have doctors using my book. My book is in so many medical practices and in universities in Australia, part of their curriculums. Yeah, so it's opening up. It's really awesome. The other thing is also, like, for example, I had a client who had a gallbladder removed. And then 2 weeks later, she called me, but this is before we actually even worked, because I told her what the emotional stress behind that was. And 2 weeks later, she said, I just had my gallbladder removed, and I thought we will deal with the issue, but now I have kidney stones. And I'm like, why are you so surprised? Because the emotional stress that the gallbladder caused, the resentment that was there that you had towards a family member, the gallbladder was gone, but the body's like, well, the trauma is not gone. So it just moves.
So basically, conventional medicine has its place, but it needs to know its place. And right now it doesn't.
Exactly.
So let's speak a little bit about healing, because you both have actually slightly different methods that I'm curious to hear more about. Because I noticed that you, Yvette, speak about or said in a video that we don't need to relive the trauma to feel it. And I know, Teal, you're saying that that it's beneficial to feel the trauma and the feelings. So So who wants to go
so
first?
I don't know. I haven't like studied enough of your process, but so basically I'll hit you with my thing, and then she'll hit you with her thing.
Yeah.
There's a chance that because she's geared a lot of her processes towards specifically physical ailments and things like that, that when it comes to a physical ailment, you may not need to relive something. My process that I designed is very specifically for emotional triggers that manifest as physical ailments later, usually. But what I noticed basically is that, like we said before, in the moment of trauma, an aspect of you dissociates. What dissociation is, I'm not going to actually experience what I'm living through. So let's say that you get abused. So a 4-year-old gets abused, right? If she's raped, a part of the consciousness goes, whoop, not going to be in this experience.
Yeah.
So basically, that's where the consciousness stops. Because it will never live through the experience, there is no resolution, there is no forward movement. It's like a skipping CD. So when you come back to the original trauma, but actually consciously live through it, meaning, okay, I choose to experience this, you're undoing the process of dissociation. Now, my main passion in this life is post-traumatic stress disorder. It is dissociation in the moment of trauma that is causing post-traumatic stress disorder. And what undoes it is the decision to live through the experience as opposed to dissociate. So the process that I designed first has somebody relive it, but when you consciously do it, meaning when you say, okay, I choose to experience this and I choose to experience these feelings, you're coming at it from a standpoint of empowerment instead of disempowerment. So continue.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah, so what do you
Okay.
tell us about your method, Evette?
I agree with what Teal said. I really do agree with that. The only reason why, and my work also does sometimes take the person back to something that when it happened. But I'm just going to use myself as a quick example because most of my research, and yours as well, Teal, is based upon our experiences in our childhood and life, right? So when I finally, with all the abuse and the sexual abuse that happened in my life, when I finally decided to deal with it, someone took me through a process where I relived the trauma and the practitioner lost control of the situation.
Oh,
And
God.
the trauma was just there and it wouldn't complete. And
Oh,
she
God.
didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I walked out and I just left it. I know. And I just left. I was 2 days left. I was a blink away from suicide. Like I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I'm like, I hate this. And I'm like, I hate you, God. Why is this happening to me? I went into the whole victim self-pity instead of just trying to come out of it. So I called a friend and I'm finally like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to let this spill the beans out. This is what happened. I can't take it anymore. And because my ego wouldn't let me ask for help. So I decided, okay, I'm going to figure out something that's really gentle that can allow someone to deal with really traumatic traumas in a very gentle way. So for example, if I have a client who come to me with rape trauma, I'm not gonna take her back to that. For example, what I will do is a gentle introduction. I'll say, okay, you know what? Let's pretend we're at your conception. So let's look at the egg and we see the sperm coming and the sperm's knocking on the eggshell. Pretend that you're the egg and tell me, how do you feel? And boom, all that rape trauma and violation will come up, but it comes up in a controlled way where the person actually feels in control. And then you can start doing the healing and you start doing the healing. And then maybe in about half an hour, you'll ask them, go back to that time when you were raped. I want you to be there. I don't want you to look at it. I want you to be lying there looking at that person and tell me, how does it feel? And they're like, I feel pretty calm. I feel actually sorry for him. Like, why is he even doing this? That's what you want. It's just a matter of trying to keep the situation in control.
I've never doubted that with myself. See, that's the thing. Man, she's nicer than I am to people.
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
just,
we're going there now.
the thing is just sometimes, and these things do sometimes happen because the practitioner gets so triggered because they haven't dealt with their stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I worked so hard on myself so that I can sit and look at someone with a straight face when they just tell me, my dad said I had to choose between him or my brother, and if I don't choose him, then he'll kill my brother. And the brother was murdered in front of her. Like that could cause secondary trauma to a practitioner. Look at your face. Like, Janneke, you see how you're reacting? That's called secondary stress and trauma that's being caused. You can't do that if you're a practitioner. Oh, yeah. You have to keep a straight face and hold a strong space for that person to feel that, okay, this is a place where I can let go. It's your responsibility to do that. So,
oh my God, don't even get me started. I can't stand it when people are, oh my God. It is so freaking critical. By the way, you know how I'm training people for this process now that are facilitators. Not only do I hand select them so incredibly carefully for this, but like it is a prerequisite. If you're going to work with people's crap, you are going into your crap every day, like a religious practice, until you become so accustomed to the human shadow that nothing can throw you off your rocker.
I do the same. I totally agree with your principles there. You have to do that. Like, I would actually put my practitioners sometimes in situations where they have to talk to someone and someone is just coming from behind and giving them a big fright or something like that, or yelling and screaming or being like just verbally abusive. And they have to keep a straight face. They have to stay focused on the session. You're not allowed to, like, what did the person just say 5 minutes ago? And then, no, going off on them again. Like, you put them through boot camp, because I have those standards and I have those standards, then you will have those standards as well. Otherwise, you could go practice somewhere else. I'm very, very strict with that. Like, very strict. Very, very. Because of experience.
So, I mean, this is interesting, because I'm thinking that sometimes we just need love and hear that we are seen, and because we parents are often like, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, that must be horrible, and I've noticed that it actually does not make me feel better.
Dude, never ever pity someone. Is that what you mean? Like, have someone to...
is that the reason that you are actually disempowered when people are like, oh...
I actually wrote a quote. I remember I was 29 and I got divorced from my ex-husband for many other reasons, but just different destinies. And I ended up in Bali with my suitcase, because we broke up in the middle of a year tour in Russia, and I'm sitting there with my suitcase, and we had a house in Vanuatu. I didn't want to go back to the house. I'm like, where am I going to go? And I went to Bali, and I sat in the backyard of a Balinese guest house. And I remember sitting there on the porch, and this other girl came past me, and I was not in a good place. I mean, as you are after a divorce, it's not fun. And she said to me, what's happening with you? Like, how do you, like, do you want to go out? And I'm like, you know what, I'm just not in the right headspace. And I told her what happened. She's like, and she stood there and she's like, oh my God, you're 29, you're getting divorced? How sad. I'm so sorry. And I'm sitting there and I'm energetically strangling her. Like, I'm seeing her face going blue as she's saying that to me, because that just made me feel it. I almost felt like telling her, you are invalidating my ability to deal with this. Mm-hmm. Don't you dare invalidate or try to make me think that I can't deal with this. Because I can. We're all going to have our highs. We're all going to have our lows, and that's okay. What you need is a facilitator. You need someone to hold the space for you. And you do that by empowering the person and reminding them why they're so awesome. You don't feed into the negativity and the mindset that they're in, because that's validating it for them. You want to get them out of that. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's how I came to, with that experience, when I was sitting on that porch, I'm like, oh my God, I've done this to other people as well. And I'm like, wow. But for some reason, some people do actually like that, because it reminds them of their mother's love, because that's how their mother showed love to them. It's like, oh, you poor little thing, you little smothering with all this little love. And it's like, they have a positive association with that, where I just don't. I felt so disempowered in that moment. And I'm like, I don't need you to add to it. Like, don't add to my drama.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Sorry.
I feel like the real issue is that we're not really attuned to the person who's in front of us. It's like, just like we're not attuned to ourselves, we're not attuned to other people. It really doesn't take that much to figure out what to say to somebody from wherever they are, whether they need validation or whether validation is just going to make them feel worse. It's not that hard when you're actually tuned in to where they are. But you have to be willing to feel emotion for that. You have, like, being that woman, I would have had to be able to not just approach you from, like, looking at you, but approach you from an aspect of, like, I'm going to feel where this person is. And then it's very easy to know exactly what they need. So, my challenge would be to attune to people.
Yeah. You know, the fun thing to that is how I would replace pity is probably by reminding the person that you have 100% success rate of surviving each and every day. You got this. You know, that's just a fun way of turning it around for me. It's like bring humor into it, and it's like, yeah, you're right, actually. Like, it's just reminding the person that you've been through more than enough without actually saying it, like turning it into a positive aspect instead of using the negative and piggybacking on that. Turn it into a positive and then piggyback on that. So that's just my response to that and how I probably would deal with someone that's going through a rough situation. If it's a client, I wouldn't say that, obviously, but if it's like a passing by conversation or someone that I can't really sit with and have an in-depth conversation with, then that would be my response.
Let's speak a little bit about victimhood and empowerment, because Evette, you speak a lot about empowerment, that we're not brought up to be empowered. We give our power
That's
away.
That's why we have religion.
And that's probably why we get all these traumas as well, that they are accumulating because we're not empowered. Can you speak a little bit about that, both of you?
So what's the actual question?
Well, is that...
I just because I can go so broad, I just don't want to rant.
Well, I guess as an approach for how we can heal, to get more empowered, and what that means. I mean, to be responsible for your own life. How do we do that? How do we empower ourselves?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the responsibility part, because that's often the hardest part for people, because mostly people have a negative association with being responsible, because normally these days with parents being so emotionally unavailable and everything that's happening in today's society, where responsibility is seen as just a heavy burden, it's seen as a loss of freedom, it's seen as losing my joy, my identity, and everything else. And gosh, I have to keep bringing this back to, because this is such a big question and I have so much to say. And so it comes down to understanding that taking responsibility means that you don't have to take responsibility for what happened, because people from abuse, it's very hard for them to hear that. So I'm very, very careful, and me understanding that as well when someone first said that to me, and I really had to contain myself not to physically hurt that person, because my who I was a few years ago, you wouldn't recognize. Like, I was a very, very different person. So I do understand the aspect of taking responsibility, which is very important. So my advice would be take responsibility as of today. How you act, how you behave, how you respond, how you're going to show up tomorrow, how you're going to show up next week, then take responsibility for the role that you play and the aspect and contribution that you contribute in other people's lives as well. That you can take responsibility for, and you have to own that. That you have to own. Now, the part about being a victim, God, I was that my entire life. Like, I can totally relate to that. Just being a victim of everything, blaming everyone, because I didn't want to take responsibility for how I was feeling. I didn't want to take responsibility for the fact that I was scared of stepping into my power. I didn't want to take responsibility for not being a good public speaker or a healer or anything else like that. So being a victim became my identity. It was who I am. If I wasn't being a victim, I had no freaking idea who I was. If you took that aspect away from me, I would crumble, because my entire life foundation and existence was built on this false identity, because the feelings and emotions were so real, and I was trying so, like, self-medicating and drinking and smoking and doing the whole over-exercising too much and doing all these things and eating disorders, everything that everyone can relate to. I also went through that. You know, just because I'm a healer doesn't mean that I had this fluffy childhood, because most people become healers because they were looking for answers and healing their own wounds, and that's why we become who we are. So the victim aspect is that it starts to serve you in a positive way. A negative mindset starts to serve you in a positive way because it gives you permission to avoid everything that you're scared of. It gives you an excuse. And the other thing also with being the part about being a victim is that some people, I actually had a client, when we were trying to work on the identity and the victim and feeling all these feelings, it's just like, Evette, I don't want to let it go. This pain is my life story. This is my trophy. I earned this pain. I am not letting this go. And I'm like, okay. That's fine. I can do it half an hour before my next client. That's absolutely fine. And she was like, whoa, no, okay, wait. And then she came back and she's like, okay, you know what? Let's look at this. And we did. But it's really about how being a victim serves you. Because being a victim also often means that people become the peacekeeper. They become the quiet one. Because the peacekeeper is the one that often doesn't get into trouble. They don't get yelled at. But being the peacekeeper means that you enable the abuser. So you just feed and you keep on recreating a lifestyle for yourself, which it becomes. Being a victim becomes like a lifestyle. It's like depression. It becomes a lifestyle. So, and you just keep feeding into that cycle. So that's my shortest possible answer.
Wonderful. Do you have something to add, Teal?
Well, she took the words right out of my mouth there with the identity piece. Because, like,
yeah.
What human beings across the world, because we're all socialized, are the most attached to is the idea of being good. So when you're trying to deal with empowerment with people, you instantly run into the association that the mind has made between empowerment and being a bad girl or a bad boy. Because a lot of the actions that we take as children in the direction of our empowerment are perceived as a direct affront to the authority in our lives. So we basically start to link those two together. Empowerment means I'm bad. So you're basically up against all of the ego's desire to be a good person when you're up against the idea of empowerment. And so unwinding for, what I do with people is a lot of unwinding of those original traumas where you did want to, say, take an action in the direction of what felt best to you, but you were prevented from doing that. So if you want to make empowerment in the present moment like super, super simple to understand, it's just this fast. I have the capacity to affect my life in a way that positively reflects back to me. So that's empowerment. Disempowerment is I have to show up at a job I can't stand because I have to. Empowerment is I don't really feel good in that situation, so if I take an action, I see a result and I feel better as a result. So any action you're taking, I mean, I like to simplify things. We make empowerment such a complicated thing. It's literally any action you take, any thought you think, anything you say that pulls you closer to what I do can positively affect my life is empowerment. So, like, there's no difference than the path of enlightenment and the path of empowerment. There's no difference between the path of healing and the path of empowerment.
So more on how to heal ourselves. And I want to move on later on to what it means to be healed, actually, to be whole.
Here we go.
but let's talk a little bit about how to listen to your body, because that's still a little bit like airy to me. Listen to your body, and I'm like, yeah, where should I start listening?
It's abstract, is what you mean. Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit abstract in a way. So
Did you want to go first too?
Well, here's the good news. The good news is that it'll start abstract just like anything else. If you hand somebody a harp and you say, start playing music at G minor, someone's going to be like, So that only makes sense through practice. So basically, the first thing you should understand if you're watching this is, if it seems abstract to listen to your body or abstract to communicate with your liver, for example, I would expect it to feel that way. So we don't get to tell the story, which I know a lot of you watching this are doing. You just went into that pattern where it was like, okay, now I feel like crap about myself because I'm talking to these girls who are so good at listening to their body, and I'm like, yeah. So first of all, given your upbringing and the way that society is, everyone should feel like it's an abstract concept right now. What we're here to do is to change that. So step one, you start tuning into the way your body feels in the present moment. It's the opposite of dissociation. It's very simple. We can take this on as a really simple practice. I'll have people set a timer, for example, to go off at like hour increments or however much they want to during the day. And their job, kind of like a spiritual practice, is to close their eyes and to feel their body. So where do I feel tingling? Where do I feel pressure? Just noticing anything that's there. And to begin with, it'll be very faint. It's going to be like, oh, I'm sort of confusing and it feels sort of numb. Then usually it'll be one day you close your eyes after you've had an argument, say, and then you can feel kind of a crush in your chest. So you write down crushing sensation in the chest. And that actually tunes your brain in to the internal reality that you have, the inside of your body, what you call you, right? And then it amplifies. Anything you focus on becomes more. So what you'll notice is pretty soon it's almost like you've got a dual consciousness where you can feel your body at the same time as interacting with the external world. It's just that you're not losing your self-awareness in the external anymore. I'm simultaneously aware of all the sensations going on in my body, aware that all of those sensations are a communication about me, how I feel about situations and everything else. At the same time, I'm having a conversation with you. We have the capacity for that kind of consciousness. It's just that it's not an exercised muscle. So that would be the first thing if people are super numb to do. But then, like, I also offer processes, I'm sure she does too, for like when you have a specific aspect of your body, like a broken arm, for example. What we don't know, but that we should, is that we can actually communicate with the bone as if it's a separate, like, entity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's part of you, but it's also a separate thing. So you can talk to your arm bone as if it's a being with its own consciousness, its own voice. And then we can engage, say, in even like a visualization process where we close our eyes and we say, okay, imagine the bone in front of us, but as a person. Or imagine the liver as a person.
And it will respond?
Well, yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is really scary. Yeah. It'll respond immediately. So for example, like I was working with somebody a while ago and we go, okay, so like you've got your liver. Let's imagine that your liver is a person who's talking to you. So we've got you in a black room. So the liver shows up. Now the first thing that happened is that they saw the liver as this very obese, like very short, obese, and like pockmarked guy who was super upset. And he was like, basically swearing at her, screw you for everything you've done to me type of thing. And so she's like, okay, I don't even know what to do with this. And it's also a man. It's not even a woman. So she's learning a lot about just that organ within her body. And by working through the emotions that person, that visualized person who was the representation, the symbolic image of the liver had, she was able to figure out what life choices were leading to the state of the liver condition. Mm-hmm. Which was specifically that she continued to put herself around a relationship with somebody who was not allowing her to do anything she wanted to do. It was just complete and utter control. So she was just getting more mad and more mad and more mad and more mad, and all of that stuffing. And so, I mean, the bile, even Chinese methodologies understand that the liver is a heat organ, and the bile is basically about all of that anger and the resentment. So it's why, when somebody gets angry, you say, oh my God, like you look like you're full of bile. We have a lot of this kind of discourse, isn't it interesting? And in the way that we speak even, we have a lot of this discourse where we do actually understand the way that the body relates to the emotional field. It's just that we're not, noticing how much information we already do have. But that's an example of how you can interact with an aspect of you. But I mean, what would be really fun right now is if, you could do it with her right now. You could take her through a process, like relative to one aspect of her body, so you could see how it works in real time to communicate with that aspect of your body.
Exactly. And the thing, what I actually noticed is with a lot of people who don't listen to their body is normally the people that you'll see that stopped having fun. Oh yeah. Being intuitive is playful. When I asked, I once spoke to probably one of the best psychics that I've ever met in my life, and I asked her, I'm like, how do you do this? And she said, you know what? I just pretend. And I'm like, what? I just pretend. I said, I pretend that I can see your future and I just see what happens and that's it. And that's her playful approach, because the more you try to control, or the more you try to control the process, or the more you try to look for something specific, you're not going to hear what the actual message is, because you have a certain expectation. You have to let go of that expectation, because that is what sabotages your ability to see what's actually really going on. So when you look at what's happening with the body, for example, if the shoulder is sore, what I would do is, okay, well, let's pretend that part of your body had a voice. If it did, just randomly, let's have fun. Like, we're just going to pretend that it's just going to say something really quickly to you. What would it be? And the person's like, I don't know, I'm not hearing anything. I'm like, stop trying to hear something.
Yes.
It's speaking 3, 2, 1 now. What did it say? And then something will come up and a little message will come out, and I'll ask, okay, so that little voice, was that mom? Was it dad? Was it yours? Oh, it sounded like my mom. I'm like, okay, so that sounded like your mom. So is it inside or outside of the body? Normally, if the feeling is inside the body, then it would be a clear indication that that's your stuff that you have to deal with, that you're holding on to. If it's a feeling that's often outside of the body, then it would be someone in your life that you had interaction with, or it could be what Teal and I would call soul fragments, which is just a memory of someone else that's just in your space. So And the body just always answers you. It's just,
Always.
it always does.
Always.
It never ever does not give you an answer. The body is designed to help you to survive. The body is here to serve you. Your body will never ever fail you. The fact that you become ill, that's just your body saying, listen, you're putting me through all the stress and you're not giving me the resources that I need to look after you. The body will never ever fail you. Your body is constantly trying to keep you alive. Your body is your biggest fan.
Can I I'm air going off your rant. You ready?
Yeah,
Okay,
go.
So earlier we were talking about the mainstream medical community, right? Conventional medicine. From my perspective, the single most damaging thing that conventional medicine does in terms of healing is to convince people that their body is somehow against them.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That's my feeling. That is not with me. Yeah.
Well, it's obviously when you're not hearing the voices and anything, it sort of feels like it's trying to prevent what you want.
Yeah.
But I promise you, the minute that you start communicating with your body, you will be convinced of the exact opposite. There is not one thing that a body manifests that does not manifest for a positive reason. For example, cancer. Let's just take cancer, because cancer is like the big C. Everybody on Earth is freaked out about it. There's war on cancer. There's pink everywhere, right?
The funny thing is we all have cancer. It just hasn't manifested.
I know. Oh my God. If I could tell you from an
Yeah.
extrasensory's perspective, if I could tell you how many cancer cells the average person has in their body, it would blow your mind.
It's insane. Yeah.
Okay, so cancer, ready?
Yeah.
Cancer, childhood wounds. When you go through trauma, right, you're always dealing with childhood wounds with cancer. It's unhealed grief. Basically, so somebody in their adult life has manifested cancer, and at this point, it's like the life sentence. My God, you're dying because of this thing. What she said earlier is completely accurate about healing and fun. You will not meet people who have cancer that are not in a grief process. These are not people who are like, I love life. Life feels so amazing. I'm so full of it. That may be the story that the freaking people tell about them, right? Their family members will tell that story about them sometimes. But let me ask you this question. How many times have you been to like a funeral and had the people at the funeral say, you know what? They were miserable. They were not full of life. They were really unhappy. Never. They always tell a story that's freaking inaccurate. And so basically, you've got a person who is not really enjoying life. They're going through the motions of life. A lot of stuff they're doing in the present moment doesn't serve them. So the cancer comes in and says, all right, you know what? You're at a freaking crossroads. You either get to change everything. I mean freaking everything right now. Or you're dying. That's what we're going to do with you. So it's basically your body is the best gift ever, which is why the people who get over cancer, the ones who really heal, will tell you it is the best thing that ever happened to my life. Because if I hadn't gotten to that freaking crossroads, I wouldn't have changed anything. So your body is basically saying, all right, you're not making the choice. I'm making the choice for you. Let me help you out. We're done. You are going to do something that feels good. And it's going to happen now. So even that, like, we tend to get cancer and go, oh my God, everything's gone horrible. When in fact, the exact opposite is true.
Wow.
The thing is also, I actually also, with the sadness and everything, so then you also get the people who suddenly get cancer and they were the happiest person alive. And it's like, how did that happen?
But they became happy after getting cancer?
The people are they're generally happy people. Like, they're always happy, always in a good mood, and suddenly you hear about them getting cancer. That's because of the internal process that people outside of them are not aware of. Because I actually had a person get so angry with me. She's like, well, my mom got cancer, and, you know, she's the best person, the most positive person that I know. I'm like, there's a difference between what you express and what's really going on internally.
Completely.
It's completely different. Yeah. So I know some people are going to be going, but what about the people that do look happy, but they ended up getting cancer? Like, that's the answer.
I can't tell you how many times a day,
You don't know what's going on in someone else's life.
You don't. And like, if I had a nickel for every time somebody says, oh my God, I've seen the pictures of you on Instagram. You look so happy right now. And I'm like, you know, mentally knowing, actually, I've been in bed for the last 7 hours crying is what's happened today. So there is a huge disconnect between the internal reality that people are experiencing and the external reality that people are perceiving because we're not attuned. Yeah.
So we could go on for hours and speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, for those who do not have this book, I was just wondering if you could say something about how we can interpret our bodies. Is it very literal? Like
Oftentimes.
yes,
Oftentimes it is.
I get blind. I couldn't see something if I have problems with my eyes. I mean, is it that literal in a way?
Let's say yes and no. I'm sure she's going to say yes.
I was about like a yes or no, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it is quite literal. It's a pretty good idea to actually take a literal approach to a lot of things. But a lot of times when you go into, and let's say communicate with that aspect of the body, you will find that it's not directly literal, you know. So we can't simplify it to that degree. And I think the biggest mistake that a lot of the metaphysicians have made is that they've oversimplified it, and so they sound stupid. That's why nobody's taken seriously, especially in the medical field. Is because when you're like, oh, you know, I've got eye problems, which means I don't want to see the future, which quite literally is the case often, but still, it's like when you put it that way and it's only about that.
Yes.
The average doctor is going to be like, oh my God, give me a freaking break, right? So yes and no is the answer. Sorry, I took that over. Just
Yeah.
No, but that's in a nutshell, yeah. No, it's a yes or no answer.
Okay.
Yeah. It's exactly what Teal said. I mean, I'll just be repeating what she said, yeah.
So basically, just to sum up a little bit, you need to go deeper within yourself, actually.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, and listen
How
to
about
your
getting
body.
to know yourself? How about getting to know yourself?
Right,
Because that's ultimately what it's all about.
So yes, so like this is part of the. So I'm just gonna. Can I aerial off here for a minute? Okay, so I'm like one of the pickiest people in the world when it comes to people who work in the healing field, right? So obviously, that book you just lifted up. The reason that book is one of my favorites is because there's so much about questioning yourself. So it's not just this is 100% what's happening with you. This is the pattern that often happens with people who have manifested this condition. Now, these are the questions that you need to start asking yourself if you've got this condition. It's freaking genius. Like, it's absolutely genius.
Thank you.
So how would it look like to become whole if we really work through? I mean, you guys have worked through a lot of things, like will we ever get to a goal? I know there's no goal, but what is whole?
Wholeness, to me, wholeness is whatever it means to you. You have to decide what your definition of wholeness is going to be and make that your goal, because it's dangerous to think that I want to be like this person, I want to be like that person, I want to be like Buddha, I want to just be eat the whole time and just laugh. And you can't do that, because that person is that person in this life because they were born to be that person. You were not meant to be that person. You have your own qualities, you have your own talent that you're not nurturing because you're so focused on what other people are doing and what you think other people are thinking that you're not even noticing what's happening and staring at you in the mirror and seeing, how can I utilize this infinite resource of infinity that's standing in front of me? How can I use that? Instead, we're over here, we're over there, but this person, but that person. It's like, own your power, just own that a little bit more. And you'll fall in love with that feeling, because that's an awesome feeling to have. I mean, even to this day, with all the work that I've done on myself, it hasn't stopped. I'm still working on myself. I still have my good days. I have my bad days. The other day, someone was like flickering their traffic lights off when I gave them the finger. And I'm like, oh, wow, Evette. But, I have my moments as well. I don't have road rage, but I was just having a really irritated day. I was tired. So yes, I'm going to have my moments. That's not something that you can ever change. Like, being happy is a state of mind. It's like someone that's stuck in a prison and the person actually looks really genuinely peaceful. And when you can speak to that person and they might actually feel peaceful. And what that person will say to you is that freedom is a state of mind. You don't have to be somewhere to experience something, because that's a bad excuse. If this happens, then I will change. If this happens, then I will be happy. You have to find that state of mind within yourself, because it's there. It's an emotional state. And when you achieve that, whatever is around you is just not going to matter, because it doesn't. It's your attachment to it.
Sorry. I just got very eager because I just got an
That's
insight
okay.
all of a sudden. I was
Good.
thinking that
That's
maybe,
good.
you know, it's not like, okay, now we're whole, like I started out this question with, but all of a sudden you heal a lot of traumas and then you just create perhaps a different life.
Yes.
So you
so
start
this
a new
is how-
path.
Without a doubt.
So this is how to think of it.
Without a doubt.
We need to let go of the idea of wholeness because it's that attachment to the
totally
idea
let
that's
go.
causing us an issue. Instead, you want to leave yourself as a question mark.
Like you define it, like you narrow it too much. Wholeness
Yeah.
is for me like squeezing this
Yep.
infinite possibility in this tiny little box.
It's a concept, and concepts do as much damage as they do good. So basically, if you can leave your idea of yourself in your healed state as a question mark, you don't know what it is yet. You basically continue, like whatever you come up against, you become conscious of that layer and let's call it healing, heal that layer. And you're continually doing this, not knowing what exactly is going to unfold. But Buddha didn't know what the hell he was before he sat underneath the Bodhi tree. So like if we could all take on that process, we don't know what we're going to be.
Yeah.
We don't know that we're going to be a Buddha. We don't know that we're going to be a Christ. We don't know that we're going to be, you know, like Jack the Ripper. We don't know what we're going to be. The point is that we're in this exploration process that we call healing to unveil whatever the hell that is.
Ah, I love that.
And let that new
perspective.
life unfold itself. Like stop
Yeah.
controlling everything.
Right.
Let go of needing to control stuff. Let it
Yes.
go. Be playful.
To totally be played and ready for me to like here's ready for
Come
this.
out and play. Yeah.
I'm gonna do a home run here. Ready? Hey, here's your home run. The majority of people who are going to be watching this episode, the majority of people who are in the spiritual field and in the healing fields, we're so incredibly obsessive with the idea of healing that becomes its own identification and issue.
Yes.
So basically, we've got this problem, and I love this because you know
An
that
excuse
someone's in a
sometimes
great
even.
space. Oh yeah, you know that we're in a great space when you hit a
yeah.
point where healing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because basically, that's the point at which your being says, no, what you need to do to heal is to realize you don't have to fucking heal.
Right.
And in fact, when you continue to try to heal, you're giving yourself the message
that.
over and over again that something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with you. In case you didn't know, something's wrong with you. And that in and of itself is a disease.
And also ask yourself the question, who or what always made you feel that there was something wrong with you, and just deal with that maybe.
Exactly.
Like, just squash it, damn it.
Oh my
But yeah,
goodness.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Teal. That's 100%, yeah.
I just love that. I felt like we
Got a
came
little
full
pom-poms
circle
out,
now.
and you're like, ooh, yeah, but it's true. It's
yeah,
true.
but that was so important because I have felt that I need to heal this and heal that, and then the underlying thought is there's something wrong with me. I'm not, you know, I have to fix it. I have to fix it, and I've been noticing that it's really making a toll on me. That
Oh, yeah.
thought.
But also, the thing also is, it can also come from a place of just being absolutely bored. It can be used as an excuse where you're diverting all your energy into trying to fix yourself because you don't want to step into your power. The very thing that you're searching for is the very thing that you're so freaking scared of. And you keep sabotaging things. So there can be so many reasons behind that.
Right.
But yeah, healing work can ultimately become a crutch.
Right. Awesome. I love the question mark
Little
too.
training
I love
wheels,
that,
yeah.
the wonder, the openness.
Be open to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop trying to control everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was just awesome. Can you tell us, Evette, what you're working on now? What your new projects are?
Oh my God. I am writing another edition of Metaphysical Anatomy, but I'm not going to say what it's about. It's going to be fun. Something new that's not on the market. So again, like I'm trying not to reinvent the wheel. So I'm having fun with that. And now what I'm also doing is just to get my schedule to work and to be able to reach probably a bigger audience as well, to help people who can't travel. I'm actually going to do the level 1 of metaphysical anatomy technique. I'm actually going to make an online course for that so that people can start having immediate access, just helping them with whatever issues it is that they want. And the fun part about that is I actually teach how to work on yourself, which is probably for me as well a very big block, and just helping people to get through that block and how to just easily, go where you don't always necessarily want to go, but still stay in control of the situation. So that's my project. Yay.
Great. And what about you, Teal? What you're up to?
Yeah, what are you up to? I want to know too.
I am up to, well, the completion process comes out this month,
I'm excited.
at which point I'm going to be in for some serious opposition in the psychiatry and psychological field, which so it's almost like gearing up for battle, honestly. So
Don't do that.
I'm going to be up to a lot of that. And then
It's gonna
I'm
be
also
success.
training facilitators and starting intentional community. Those are pretty much the main things.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
awesome.
Thank you so much. This was just really enlightening, and what an
was
interesting conversation. I
fun.
loved having you guys together, and I'm sure you're going to connect physically
Oh, yeah.
one time and
Oh,
do
yeah.
something. I have a feeling that, this was really a match.
Intuition. That's your body speaking to you. I just had a feeling. That's how you listen to your body. It's no different to that.
Oh,
That's just one example. Yeah, you just did it.
thank you for that.
Just
Great.
bring your attention to that. So,
Okay. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Take care.
thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And thank you for watching, guys. Much light from Norway and the US. Bye bye.